So is it, oh, wait a minute, their vision still hasn't resolved since that relapse they had that affected the vision? Or is it because they're a shy kid who we think maybe is getting bullied at school, and we want to talk to the social worker who can speak to the guidance counselor and kind of get to the bottom of it? So it's way more than just the MS, or it's we really are looking at this kid in a whole.
From the cubicle to the lab, the studio to the war room, climbing the corporate ladder, or joining a scrappy startup, experience a day in the life of the jobs you want.
You're now listening to the Experience a Diddle podcast. You'll hear from professionals, entrepreneurs, and recent grads, all inspiring you to gain experience beyond the classroom and launch a career of your own.
We're your hosts, Chris DeBow
and Matt Poe.
Welcome to the A Diddle episode in the Nursing MS series with NYU senior staff nurse Jennifer Abate. In this episode, we're going to experience a day in the life of a nurse in a pediatric clinic treating patients with MS or other autoimmune diseases. Without further ado, let's jump right in.
My name is Jennifer Abate, and I am a senior staff nurse at NYU. There, I pretty much help to run the pediatric clinic with our director, and we try to take a holistic approach of treating patients who have multiple sclerosis and some rare autoimmune neurological disorders. We just keep track of them, we follow them, we help them with medication, and we try to make sure that pretty much everything about their life that we can assist with is going smoothly. Multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease that is affecting your central nervous system. That means your brain and your spinal cord. There's a lot of theories about why it happens. Your body decides to attack the myelin sheath, which is that jelly-like coating that goes over the nerves and makes your brain signals nice and smooth. That tells your legs that we're going to walk, your arms we're going to move, all of your basic functioning that you do without even thinking about it. And for some reason, your body decides, wait a minute, this myelin that covers the nerves, it's a foreign body. We don't like it. We're going to attack it. So it starts to cause inflammation, and that makes an injury. And so over time, you get many marks on the brain or spinal cord that kind of look like scars, if you will. And so if you look at the what the word multiple sclerosis comes from Latin, many scars. That over time can cause many different types of functioning to be affected. Whether it's the brain or spinal cord, if you hit certain areas, you can have certain symptoms. This can affect children and adults.
I'd also read that there are 4 disease courses. Is that like stages?
Yes.
What does that mean?
So there's different types, and I don't know if the current literature is saying that this is true, but this is kind of how it's been for many years.
Okay.
There's a lot of different theories out there, but typically when you hear about MS, you would hear relapsing remitting, primary progressive, secondary progressive, and
then I also see clinically isolated syndrome.
Oh, okay. I was curious about which one you were going with.
Oh,
Yeah. So clinically isolated, that is kind of you have all of the things. We think this is MS. It smells like MS, but you haven't maybe met criteria to be diagnosed yet. But many doctors think that it's a good idea to start treatment, even if you don't meet the criteria, because the goal is stop the disease where it is.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't get worse. So why let it get to MS if we can stop it now?
Okay, so if you're in that stage, there is a prevention to not get MS?
Yes, so there is no cure for MS.
Okay.
But what we do have are really great treatments that we call disease-modifying therapies, and they can help to stop the progression of the disease. Like we tell all of our patients, MS is not the same disease it was 5, 10, 20 years ago. When you have somebody come in our office that gets diagnosed today, it's not the same as it used to be. We give you a medication, and I don't want to say it's just as simple as that, but it really is a different thing today where it's not going to affect your life. You can have normal life, normal future, have a family, do all the things that you want to do as long as you stay on top of it. And there's definitely outliers. There are people that get affected even though they take really good care of themselves and they're on treatment, that they just have a unfortunate disease course.
What are some telltale signs?
So like if somebody, so let's say somebody just notices that they're, so I'm going to take this with a grain of salt because this can be a lot of different symptoms.
Right.
A lot of times the symptom would be numbness, tingling, but that also, if somebody's arm is numb and tingling, you might think that they're having a heart attack or a stroke. So my first thought is not, typically the first thought is not always MS.
Right.
Usually it's an afterthought. But usually it's somebody who, so this is a good question because there are different types of MS and they usually affect different people, age groups differently.
Okay.
So you can have a woman in their 40s who suddenly notices a slow progression of difficulty walking. And that kind of paints more of a picture of a primary progressive versus a 21-year-old who has tingling in their legs and it started like above their waist and it didn't go away. And they thought, this is kind of weird. So then they go and they get an MRI and then they see that there are lesions or these marks on the brain. And that's somebody that probably in the beginning, at least you would say, okay, this person is most likely relapsing remitting.
It is 6 a.m. and Jennifer wakes up to get ready for work.
I'm not a morning person. Yeah, it's really hard for me. I'm not in a bad mood. It's so hard for me to wake up. So I usually lay around and think like, how many more minutes do I have until I can get out the door and make it to work on time? And so I typically just get up, get ready, shower, try to make breakfast if I can, and try to get out the door.
And then you have a bag packed.
Yes.
What's in the bag?
So the bag has everything and is always way too heavy. I don't need everything in the bag, but it usually has water, my wallet, my Metro card.
Gotcha. So yeah, is that like
chapstick?
Right.
But
your
it's
nurse
huge
survival
bag.
kit for your shift.
Yes, you always, as my aunt would say, you always need chapstick, your keys, your wallet, and you're good.
So you have a long commute. Is this
Yes.
2 hours to and from, or
Yes.
2 hours?
Wow. Where are you coming in from?
So I'm from New Jersey.
Okay.
So I was coming in from Jersey, from Somerset, and that was about 2 hours. Or if I'm coming in from Staten Island, where I'm at currently, that is, it can be about 2 hours.
So you take an express bus? then?
Yeah.
Being in Staten Island, there's no like subway or train or anything?
There is, but this is kind of like the easiest, calmest way for me to get in the morning. I can just sit there and fall asleep. So I really like that.
The bus ride's like you're sleeping, you're
Now
just
it's
chilling.
homework sometimes. I like to listen to podcasts on the
Nice.
bus.
What's your fave?
Ooh, I just finished Dr. Death. It's about a neurosurgeon in Texas. And it goes through his whole story of what he was doing and why patients were having bad outcomes. Wow. And talks about the healthcare system, and it's wild.
So it's 9 a.m. and you get to work. Can you set the scene a little bit?
Yeah.
Like, can you describe like the workplace itself, what it looks like? And
Yeah, so typically I walk in through the waiting room and all the girls in the front are there. They're ready to go for the day. And I walk in the back and see all my coworkers, all the other nurses, medical assistants and social worker that we have. And we have a really good time at work. So it's, we say our good mornings to everybody and what's going on. And then I usually go into my desk, clock in, quickly check my email, my voicemail, make sure nothing's really urgent happening.
What is something that would qualify as urgent that you would walk into in the morning? Like an email or something?
Let's say a patient's parents call me or they email me and they say that the patient woke up and they can't walk down the stairs.
Oh.
Or they woke up and they can't see out of their left eye.
Wow.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That's something I would probably stop everything and give them a call and say, hey, what's going on? And find out if it's something that they need to go to the ER, come into the office, or what exactly is going on.
9:30 rolls around and she's clocked in. She said hi to her coworkers. Jennifer's settled in. It's time to start clinic rounds. Today is a clinic day. And that's when you meet strictly with the staff, or you're meeting with the patients at this time too? Okay,
so this is just the staff.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yeah, so we're all on the same page for the day. When we're treating the pediatric patients. We have a whole day of clinic that's dedicated to them. And our medical director is a specialist with pediatric MS. She is also a specialist with adults, but she's very well known for treating pediatric patients. And so all of the kids that we're going to see that day, I typically will make a schedule, and it has everything from their history, what brought them in, to their current situation, what's going on with them physically, what's going on with their MS or other condition that they have going on that maybe mimics MS. And I'm in touch with their parents a lot. So I will bring up subjects like, somebody's having a hard time in school, and we want to talk about what may be going on that they're having a hard time in school. So is it, oh, wait a minute, their vision still hasn't resolved since that relapse they had that affected the vision? Or is it because they're a shy kid who we think maybe is getting bullied at school, and we want to talk to the social worker who can speak to the guidance counselor and kind of get to the bottom of it? So it's way more than just the MS, or we really are looking at this kid in a whole.
Going back to it holistically.
Yes.
The word you were using
yes.
before.
We do a team approach, and we have a lot of team members. So we have the doctors, research members, the nurses, social work, nurse practitioner, and we have a few doctors that will come in every once in a while and kind of consult with Dr. Krupp, who are specialists in their own domain, like a neuro-ophthalmologist, who's a doctor who's a specialist with the neurology as well as the eyes. And so they're really helpful with helping us make diagnoses. And yeah, we
guys are like the Avengers. You all have like your own
we have like this really cool team, and
all of your own superpower.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So we go over the cases. Usually we'll pull up the MRIs that they just had, and our doctor she'll say, all right, everybody come over here. And she starts teaching, and she'll say like, okay, there's a lesion here, there's a lesion here. Let's compare. Are there new lesions? And yeah, she loves to teach us, which we all love.
Jennifer is learning every single day. NYU Langone Health is a premier academic medical center devoted to patient care, education, and research, which makes sense. It's a university hospital, and that's why there's a very educational culture. In other hospitals, it's not always the case.
The hospital I worked in Newark would have physicians who would step aside and say like, you know what? You seem like you don't really like this plan. Let me tell you why we're going to do this. And they were great. But I find where I work full time, it's a little bit more zoned for education. And I think that is the culture. I also think this doctor is just used to having residents, having students around her. She just loves to teach. She's good at it. So that helps.
Now it's 10 a.m. and Jennifer sees her first patient and their families and gets a feel for the room before she starts her line of questioning. She's got to get to the bottom of not only the child's physical health, but mental and emotional health as well.
We try to get a feel for what's going on in the room. So every time you walk into a patient's room, you're going to feel a different energy depending on what's happening. Sometimes it's not positive. So you kind of want to delve into what's going on. Is it that the child is upset that they're there because they're upset they have this chronic diagnosis? Or is there something going on that has nothing to do with this and they're having a hard time?
Gotcha. So how would you be able to tell? So
usually I am pretty direct, and we'll kind of ask like, hey, how's school going? And when they're like, oh, it's okay, I'm like, well, what are your grades like? And then, kids don't lie. Right. So you see on their face and you know if it's good or it's bad. And then I'll start saying like, well, what's your favorite subject? What subject do you hate? And then they're like, I hate math. And you find out they're failing math. And so that could be just derailing them. Even something so we think of as like cute or simple, to them it's their whole world.
Right, absolutely.
And that affects their health. We need them to be in a great state of mind so that they are in good physical health too.
And are the parents ever in the room when you're talking to them?
So the parents are always in the room.
Always in the room. Okay.
Yeah. Especially with the kids, we have to make sure that they have a guardian or somebody of age with them. That's their family member. But occasionally I will ask the parents if it's okay if I have them step out. Or sometimes I say, is it okay if when the doctor stays and talks with the child, if me and you can go and have a conversation, because sometimes the parents are concerned, but they don't want to say it in front of the child because they don't want them to think something's wrong.
Right.
Some other questions she'll ask are,
Hey, how are you feeling? Are you having any symptoms? Are you having any issues with walking? Have you fallen? Have you been sick at all? And how was the bathroom going? You going to the bathroom a lot? And usually they'll say no. And sometimes I'll say, are you urinating a lot during the night? Does it wake you up? And they'll say, yeah. I have to get up like 3 times during the night. But they wouldn't think that that's an issue.
Right.
So you kind of have to pull things out.
Making flags, yeah.
Yeah. Or sometimes they say, yeah, I'm having a lot of symptoms, and they start telling me about them.
They start like new medications, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
who would be, I guess, prescribing them the new medications? You guys aren't their only doctors, right?
Right. So if they were on something that's just for their general health, then that would probably not be coming from us.
Right.
But if it's anything to do with MS or their neurological condition, that would be coming from our doctor.
Gotcha.
And
what are like some medicines that you would common with MS that you would prescribe?
There's injections, there's oral medications that you take pills or capsules, and then there's infusions that you get through an IV. And so some are different. Some infusions you have once a month, some you have every 6 months. So they're all kind of different, and they all kind of range in efficacy and risk.
Now it's 11 a.m. and it's on to the next patient.
you mentioned that there's no cookie cutter plan or conversation because each patient is different. Now, especially since they all have the same illness, can you speak to some of the differences that you see in patients, even though they all have the same illness?
So a big thing we always talk about with each other at work is resilience. And we've just picked up the fact that some kids have it and some kids don't. And your mental state is so important, and not just for MS. I've noticed this for pretty much all areas in healthcare. The kids that are really positive and have this really good outlook on life, and they are focused on, they have MS, but that is not their identity, oftentimes do a lot better than the ones who are, this consumes them.
Really?
Yes. And you do notice a difference.
Is there a correlation between like how severe they have it and what their outlook on life? I could imagine, I don't know where I'm going with this, but maybe they don't have too much of a severe case of it and like they can be more positive. But if like this is something that's really affecting a kid,
yeah,
it'd probably be kind of hard to.
Well, there are studies that have been done that we do a lot of studies right now that they're trying to figure out, why do children have MS? Because it seems kind of rare. It's not something that was always around. It seems like a newer thing. And there's a lot of studies that correlate that children who have a lot of trauma or traumatic experiences when they're young develop MS versus children who do not have traumatic exposures. Huh. And there was a study done, and I can get you the information because I don't remember it now.
we'll put in the show notes.
But it was all about mindfulness meditation. And they did a study with patients who were doing mindfulness, meditating, trying to reduce their stress, and patients who were not. And the cohort who were doing the mindfulness and the meditation had less lesions on their MRIs when they repeated it. Huh. So they had less disease activity.
Okay. Cool.
Whoa.
So I mean,
that sold it for me. It's all about your mental state.
Yeah. And I mean, mental health people are kind of putting more R&D into it and paying more attention to it. Does MS lead to any sort of depression, or because it is a neural disorder, so it's attached to your brain, you mentioned. Yeah. Does it lead to any sort of mental health?
There's a lot of correlation between our patients who have MS and also who have depression. Okay. And I can't tell you clinically because I don't know if there's a direct correlation between the two. But I do know from experience that we do have a lot of patients who have both. Gotcha. And it's kind of hard to tell, were they going to kind of have more depression anyway? Or is it this being diagnosed with something chronic that's making them have depression?
How do you deal with managing the emotions of the parents? Are there ever why my child? Like, why is this happening? Like, how do you?
Yeah. I think that we all try to take a team approach and kind of, I work with this amazing social worker and other nurses and the nurse practitioner, the doctors. We all kind of feed off of each other and kind of like you can feel the room, like who's has a better rapport with the patient or the family member, and that person kind of takes over.
Oh, nice.
But I think we try not to sugarcoat, and we try to be there and, tell them how we understand this is a rough situation. This is not what you planned for your child. This is hard. It sucks.
Yeah.
We know that, but we're here for you, and it's going to be okay. And in a year from now, when you're used to it and you're on medicine and you're going back to your normal life, you're going to be like feeling so much better.
Right.
And they don't always believe you.
Right.
But in a year, they come back, they're totally different.
On a lighter note, it's 12:30 and it's time for lunch. Since it's a clinic day, she's grabbing a quick lunch, eating while she's working, and it's time to see the next patient at 1 p.m.
Are you worn out yet at this point, or
Yeah,
what's your? How are you feeling?
if we have like a new patient for that day, I'm pretty worn out because I've probably been talking for 2 hours and like feel like, oh my God, who wants to hear me talk anymore?
Right. Yeah.
But the parents are just so afraid of what's happening, and they need a lot of hand holding, and I like doing that for them.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be a little draining.
Jennifer is seeing patients on this particular day until about 6 p.m., but all days are different. Some days she's there until 8 p.m. with patients and their families, but pediatric clinic days are only twice a week. So let's learn what she does outside of clinic days. Occasionally, she could see adult patients with the doctor that she works under. The remainder of the day, she's following up on other patients, speaking with insurance companies, things of that nature. Other tasks include completing research activities that weren't completed during clinical, assisting patients with setting up appointments, MRIs, and facilitate infusions, and talking over the phone with patients with any concerns that they have.
There's a lot to unpack there, right? So I want to talk about first the insurance companies.
Mm-hmm.
What are those conversations like? What are your goals? Are they all different? Do you like those calls? I can imagine maybe not.
I do not like those calls. Yeah, I mean, that's like opening a can of worms. But healthcare and the insurance, they drive us crazy.
I bet.
They like to deny everything, a lot of the insurance companies. And part of my job is sometimes even writing letters and having like academic references and explaining why this person needs this drug, because there's a doctor at the insurance company who's going to review the case and look at the chart notes and say like, well, you didn't try this medicine first, so why would we give you this one that's more expensive? But so we have to make a case for why this patient needs this medicine, because maybe it's more expensive, but it's probably because it's more effective.
I for some reason didn't put like 2 and 2 together that there are doctors that work at insurance companies that would look at these cases, because I just hear like kind of like that basically insurance companies are like evil.
Yeah,
and
I always say that they went to the dark side.
Yeah, that they went to the dark side.
Yeah.
That's so
why are you denying this patient?
Right, because we on an earlier podcast that we had, he was a dentist and he doesn't like the insurance calls either, because he said that they're basically like, deciding on if this patient gets treatment or not by not like physically ever really
touching the
treating
patient.
them. Yeah. So that's the same kind of
and
critique, I guess.
The devil's advocate argument is that they just think that everything is so expensive and that patients are getting stuff that they don't really need, which is making everybody else having to pay more in premiums.
Right.
So it makes sense, but
Trying
it's
to
so
gate
frustrating.
that,
Yeah, because you're like, this person is 13 years old. They need this medication. What's wrong with you?
Right.
That's how my perspective.
Yeah.
So there's many times where we have to change our medication plan because the insurance won't cover it.
Wow.
And
It's a shame.
yeah, and we'll talk to the patient, and I'm very honest with them because it's not our choice, but I'll say, listen, this is unfortunately your plan. So we're going to try it for a couple of months and we're going to see what happens. And we're going to just make a case for that medication in 3 months.
Right.
We're going to do what we have to do.
To the college students out there who are listening to this, you're probably writing papers in APA format or maybe MLA format, thinking to yourself, when am I ever going to use this outside of school? Well, If you want to work as a staff nurse at a university medical center, you better know it like the back of your hand.
I write a letter that I have to say the APA format and all that stuff in nursing school that everybody hates doing actually comes in handy.
Okay, so
Yes.
You're actually using
it.
it.
I write the APA format in those letters. I'm like, I can't believe I'm using this. But yeah, and you write a case report about this patient, about how they presented, their symptoms, and you make a really strong case for why certain medications may be safer for them or more effective. Maybe one of our big medications that's very effective is just not even effective enough for them and they have to move up. We show why they're having new lesions on their MRI, they had a new relapse, and they need this medication. And I'm going to show you journal articles and meta-analyses that show that this happened and it was helpful. And then you send the literature with it.
And you're doing that research a lot of like in that time frame that you have dedicated to this. So like, are you ever at home like reading like?
Yeah. I read all the time about certain things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then
that sounds really boring, I know. But.
No, I bet you're like, yeah.
How much time does that take from you that you can be doing, your nursing activities, and time is money in that sense, and that's a lot of time.
An excellent point. We talk about that all the time, and I think the problem is that if you're asking somebody who's an administrator who's not clinical to write this letter, they can do it. They can physically do it. Maybe they have really great writing skills, but they might not know the clinical background in order to put it all together to make a strong case, because they might not really understand how these drugs work.
Maybe that is a career opportunity of the future, to be like patient advocate in different firms. Who knows? That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be really great.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Like, that's all you're doing all day. Like you have this medical knowing or education, I guess, and like that's all you're doing. Is just...
Or if let's say we're giving something off-label because we know that it's been shown in different studies to help something. Sometimes writing that letter can be really challenging because it's like there might not be actual literature about why we're doing it, but we're theorizing and we know it's safe, so we're going to try it.
And off-label, is that still approved by the FDA? Like, what do you mean by off-label?
So it means that the medication has been approved by the FDA for something, but not for what we're going to give it for.
Okay.
It's just like when they were doing trials, they maybe noticed that this medication for like a diuretic that also helps prevent women from losing their hair. Side note. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a lot of different drugs. They have what they call an off-market use for them.
And do you guys, know of drugs or use drugs that aren't approved by the FDA? Like, are you allowed to do that? You are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the FDA is just it's like a stamp of approval of the government. It's not like necessarily you cannot use this.
Right. So we use drugs that have been approved by the FDA for something. We only use drugs that have been studied in clinical trials. There's a lot of literature about them. We know that they're safe. We know they're effective. But maybe there's getting a drug approved for a disease is kind of a financial thing within itself because it's a lot of money to make a drug trial.
Yeah.
So let's say a particular drug is going to lose their patent and the drug is going to go generic in 6 months. They're not going to spend millions of dollars making a drug trial for this other disease that they're not getting the money back.
Yeah, gotcha.
And they know something else is going to come out and the drug is going to go generic. So that happens with a couple of our drugs that we use in MS that may not be totally FDA approved for it, but it's been shown super effective in other diseases and in MS, and we use it all the time.
Wow.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a nice perspective from the back end.
Yeah, and a lot of the insurance companies, there's a few that we do that with, and they just approve it because there's so much literature out there now that shows that it works.
Here's what her research activities entail and what's expected of her in this capacity of her job.
Everyone at the office is somehow involved in a research at some point. The doctors are very into research. They've done really cool studies and articles, and they've worked with certain drug companies. So some of the protocols that drug companies have for certain drugs is developed because of the way our doctors gave it to patients and found that it was it really helped. That happens a lot. And I don't know how many clinical trials or studies are going on right now, but there's a lot. There's always something new coming around. And
can you remember the one that you're working on today?
Yeah. So the one that I would be working on today and pretty much trying to catch up on all the time is a study that's dedicated for the pediatric patients and trying to find out why these rare demyelinating autoimmune conditions are coming from in children. So it involves giving the patient's parents a very detailed questionnaire, and just everything about their assessment gets put into this big database, and it's just collecting information from all these different centers around the country. And they're finding out pretty cool stuff every year.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so all the doctors who are in on the study, the doctor I work with, she's one of the main heads of the study. She goes and meets with everybody once a year, and they kind of get all the information together and they release it.
Nice. So are you an author at all on the papers?
I am not yet, but I hope to be soon.
Jennifer is also enrolled in a master's program at NYU, specializing as a family nurse practitioner. We'll learn about why she did it and what it takes to get into a master's nursing program in the next experience episode.
Where do classes fit into your overall schedule? Are they at night?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're at night.
Every day or?
Usually about twice a week, because I'm in 2 classes right now. Cool. So they made it really, really easy to do it while you're, I shouldn't say easy, but they made it work so you can work full time and you can be going to school.
Cool. All right. It's good to know that they're flexible like that.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
There's a lot of students out there who are like, I just got to work, but I know I need more, or I want to keep going into school, but like I need money.
Yeah.
So
there's some nights where I just want to go home. I don't want to be at school and get home at 10, 11 o'clock at night, but you have to I have to remember the big picture and why I'm doing it.
Awesome.
Absolutely. What's your class that you're really into right now?
Right now?
Yeah.
I love pathophysiology.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah,
very cool.
It's really nerdy of me, but it's very sciencey and why this is happening on the cellular level.
That wraps up the Adiddle episode in the Nursing MS series with NYU staff nurse Jennifer Abate. We hope you learned as much as we did on the important work Jennifer does to contribute to a child's health and well-being who has MS or any related diseases. Next up in the Experience episode, we'll take you through Jennifer's career journey from nursing school in Seton Hall to the ER and ICU unit in Newark to where she is today and where she plans on going. Stay tuned. You can get to know us and our guests more by keeping up with us on social. Join our community on Instagram and LinkedIn at Experience Adiddle. That's Experience ADITL. There we share our guests' rapid rounds, life hacks, and advice to you, along with pictures and videos from our Manhattan studio, Gotham Podcast Studio. Thanks for listening. To find the show notes with all relevant links and photos for this series, head over to experienceadiddle.com. That's experienceaditl.com.
If you learned something in this episode, please take some time to help our mission by leaving a positive rating and review of the show. Each week, we bring you a new interview series with guests from different jobs and industries. In every series, we live a specific day in the life, hour by hour, experience the career journey, and have a discussion about what we learned. So, don't forget to subscribe.